a religious point of view to stand against religions. Being irreligious is a religion of irreligiousness. So here, psychology labeled. First of all, it was this study of consciousness, trying to divide consciousness into units. Then they said this is useless. Then they went to functionalism, and then they went to behaviorism. And when they come to find the truth, they want to explain everything with it. You ring the bell and the dogs arrives. Does this mean that there is no God? This is a very, very, very funny thing, very fancy type of thinking. Look at the experimental works of Pavlov or Watson, and then from there they go into the writings, the philosophical writings of Skinner, that religion, there is nothing called truth in religion or in law or in whatever. It is all stimuli that have been reinforced or responses that have been reinforced, and this becomes the issue. From there they make a philosophy. Just as a pigeon pecks on a disc to get wheat to eat, we pray to God and we ask, please give us, and if by chance whatever you ask for comes through, then you are just like a pigeon, superstitious behavior. Just because a pigeon pecks and then she goes into what he calls superstitious behavior, just because of this, then this whole universe with its stars that are millions of years away from us have come out of nothing. It's really a very strange deduction from a silly pigeon or a rat up to the big issues like that. So psychology goes from one problem to the other. Then they got into psychoanalysis, you know, all the problems. Freud is now being taught in some British universities, only as history of psychology, no more. But still, in the Islamic world, you find in Morocco and Algeria, they are still more Freudian than Freud himself. We should know that after Freud, behaviorism, then humanistic psychology, all this stuff, did they go into a laboratory? Did Freud or Watson or Rogers, did they go into a laboratory and they worked and then the results came up to say man is only driven by his sexual desires, or man has no nature at all and it is the environment that forms him, or man has a good nature that needs to actualize it? This is armchair thinking. This is philosophy, not psychology. Yet, we find our lecturers doing their very best to convince their students that this is science and they teach it as such. Finally, behaviorism with its behavior therapy conquered psychoanalysis and became the bedrock of scientific psychology. But it didn't help. It only helped people who have phobias, who have disorders that can be put into a stimulus response paradigm. But when it comes to depression, the feeling of you think about yourself as bad, or that you are guilty, you are sorry, and then you go home and you weep and you cannot sleep well, and you think you contemplate suicide. This cannot be put into stimulus response. So cognitive psychology came to save psychology. One famous British psychologist said psychology first got rid of its soul. Then it got rid of its mind, because the mind was thrown away. Because if the mind is the brain, okay. But don't tell me there is a spiritual thing up there. Then it got rid of its consciousness. They said consciousness is just like the soul or mind. We just don't want to deal with it. We want to deal only with observable stimuli and response. This didn't work. So cognitive psychology came to save the situation. Thinking came back with the influence of thought or beliefs. Now, so the very last development now is cognitive behavior therapy. The cognitive and behavior, they marry together. What if someone came with this cognitive psychology in the 9th century, more than 11 or 12 centuries ago? A man by the name of Abu Zayd al-Badri. This is the book. I translated the manuscript, which is more than 12 centuries ago. And in this manuscript, al-Balkhi spoke about systematic desensitization of today. He spoke about it not in terms of bringing the cat like what Wolpe did and punishing it and then bringing it into the cage and then giving it. All this, he didn't go into animals. He went directly into man as a creation of God and the importance of thought and beliefs. He was the first person to speak in detail about psychosomatic medicine. And in this respect, al-Balkhi definitely came before everybody. In this, his book, the manuscript is called Sustenance of the Body and the Soul. And he combined every behavior that a person does, he would say, it is coming out of ishtibak. What is the meaning of ishtibak in Arabic? It means things coming into each other like this. Soul and body. Psyche and soul and body. Psyche and soul. He spoke about it in detail. I don't have time to talk about it. But he says, if there are symptoms of the body, fever, headaches, nausea, also there are symptoms of the soul. And just as the treatment of the soul, of the body, would be with physical medicine, the treatment of the soul should also be with spiritual matters. Al-Balkhi was a modern counselor. In all of his book, he does not talk about the therapist and the patient. He talks about how to make the person get rid of ugly symptoms. And in this respect, al-Balkhi actually was the pioneer of cognitive psychology and cognitive therapy. It's very interesting that al-Balkhi speaks about everything starts with a reflection. The reflection becomes a motive. What he says and what is also copied by Ibn Qayyim. The motive is so strong, then it will be done. If you don't fight it, it will be done. And then after you do it, you will have to try to revise it. If you don't revise it, it will become a habit, which is very difficult to get rid of. So everything starts with the thought, according to him. So he said, sick thoughts develop psychological disorders, and healthy thoughts will make a person healthy psychologically and happy. He gives very beautiful examples in all of these. He went to the extent of doing something, saying something that no cognitive psychologist mentioned here. He said, when you are healthy, you keep in your house a box, first aid box. This is for what? For emergencies. You have been wounded, your son already developed colic, then you have a few medicines to give before you take him to the doctor. He says in the same way, you must have good thoughts in your mind prepared when you are relaxed and happy. Store in your brain, in your mind, good thoughts and healthy thoughts, so that if something happens, you will pull it out and use it. Look at the way he talks about these aspects. Then he was the first to differentiate between psychoses and neuroses, between psychological disorders and mental disorders. Mental disorders are not in our normal language. Psychological disorders are emotionally disturbed. He goes on to detail this, not only do this, but he says, for the psychoses, I leave this to the medical doctors. As for the neuroses, the emotional anxiety disorders and mood disorders, I will try to classify and show you how to treat it with cognitive therapy. He divided the emotional disorders into 4. Anger, fear and panic, number 2. 3, al-huzn, depression. And the 4th one is obsessions. Waswasa, what we call today OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Just imagine he said this 12 centuries ago. And then he showed how he used cognitive therapy to treat each one of them. I don't have a lot of time to talk to you about all that, but I will tell you the following. First of all, he said, people who have a phobia generally are phobic of something which is really not dangerous. And the best thing is for them to begin to re-evaluate their thought in this direction. He gave a beautiful example. He said, if we take a Bedouin from the desert and put him in London, and there is fog, he will be afraid of the fog. He will think the fog is something solid, he will be afraid to get into it. But if he is gradually taken into it, then he will discover it is only humid air. He said the same thing in terms of a lot of the phobias, the fears that people have. And he showed how this can be done gradually and with the opposite response, which is what we call today systematic desensitization. He gave us a lot of beautiful examples. He gave the example of the medical students when they first see the dead bodies, they are afraid and shocked. But with the support of the lecturers and the repetition, then gradually the person will come and look at, maybe he will eat his lunch while dissecting the dead body. He said, how did this happen? And then he explains how it happens. He gives examples of people on horsebacks and how they train them. He is really a genius in this respect. He spoke one of his very strange discoveries is that of dividing depression into 3 forms. Just imagine what he said. He said, first of all, there is the normal depression. Everyone becomes depressed from time to time. This is normal. Then there is a depression caused with a specific thing happening in the environment. You lose something important. Suddenly you lose your money. You lose your best friend, he dies. Then you become depressed. He said, here the depression, the huzn, the sadness has a specific known, well-known cause. But then he said there is a third type of this depression for which there is no obvious reason. And he said this is caused by the body. Something happens in the body. He calls humors. Today we call it hormones. This will cause the person to suddenly become completely depressed, lose all interest in life. And then he gives the best kind. I tell you, I'm using what I have read from Badri in treating my own patients, particularly in this area of depression and in the phobias. He says that you should change the thought of the person. Now you are depressed because you lost your money. But being depressed will do two serious things to you. First of all, it is going to cause you physical disorder. Because when your emotions are down, when you are down with depression, this can affect your own body and you will be sick. Look at this psychosomatic approach. Secondly, he said, why are you sad? Is it because of yourself? Because you lost someone important? But if you continue being depressed and depressed and depressed, then eventually you will harm yourself. It is yourself that made you sad because you lost your friend. You cannot lose yourself, which is more important to you than your friend, by destroying yourself. It is an Islamic, it also goes into an Islamic approach. But generally, the book, when you read it, you feel you are reading a modern textbook in cognitive psychology and cognitive therapy. Anger, why are you angry? Now, these are the few areas in the manuscript where he became a bit more Islamic. When you are angry, remember a few things. He says, change your thought about the person who made this anger, put yourself in his place. And ask yourself, why are you angry? Because you told him to do so and he didn't do it. Just look at your own life history. How many times have you done what you are angry with? Have you ever been careless about things they told you to do and you didn't do? Now you are so angry about something you have already done. Then he tells the person, don't take action. Wait, let the person be away from you. Don't see him all the time. Give it a day, give it 2 days, and then come. He said this is very important for people who are amidst the prince, because the prince may be angry and take action. Cut off his head. Then tomorrow you repent, you cannot bring the head back. So, he says, keep the person away. Then the third thing, which is very important, you are a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you are angry with X because he was not good to you in some way. How can you do this and you are a slave of Allah and you are not doing what Allah is telling you to do? If you are being without humility and without the Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, our dear beloved Prophet, says if you make sujood from the day you are born until the day you die, you will not give Allah back what He has given you. So how come now you, because a slave of God did this and that, and you have been lying, you have been doing this and that, which Allah told you not to do, you are doing it. Look at this kind of cognitive behavior therapy that brings the spirit into the clinic. I can go on talking for a long time about behavior therapy, but it is not only our behavior therapy, our society. Now, you go to your classes and teach conditioning, stimulus response, the dog salivated or the rat pressed element. Now, Al-Ghazali spoke about this in detail. If you are bitten by a snake, a colored drop will cause you fear. He says, if someone brings you a cup is used for sucking blood from in treatment, hijama. If someone brought this cup with you, with honey to drink, you will not drink because you are associated with the blood. I tell my students, and I will finish with this, I tell my students, Al-Ghazali spoke about this, but nobody now makes hijama, they don't remember it. So I will give you a concrete example, I say to my students. You know this bottle that you use for terminal patients in the hospital? They put it, he cannot go to the toilet. So they bring this bottle, they put it under the patient so that he urinates in there. If I buy a new bottle like this, brand new, and I come to my guest, I bring it and I put soup in it, please drink. Particularly if it is lentil soup, drink. He will not drink. Why? Be logical, this I just taught it. Why? Because he associates it with what it is used for. This is what Al-Ghazali said. And here you can see the stimuli and the responses and conditioning that we teach to our students. Already, these people have done it. The problem with us is that we do not go to read the works of our elders, Muslim scholars and physicians. This is our problem. And our problem is that just because the Westerners have made airplanes and have made this, then we think everything they say is also good and fine. But I think the time is coming for you to come up with Islamic psychology that will be taught even in the Western world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Badri, for really enlightening us on the importance of going back to our Islamic root in order to understand the true nature of human beings. But inshallah, we'll continue the discussion after our last presenter for today, Professor Mulyani Kartanegara. Please, the stage is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Waalaikumsalam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wa bihi nasta'inu ala umuri dunya wa din. Wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursalin sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. Thank you very much for the time that's given to me to deliver something related to Islamic psychology. Although I am not everything, but someone who wants to share with you my knowledge in Islamic philosophy. And if you look at the Muslim philosophers' works, actually psychology is one of the subjects they discuss. But if you look at the Ashifa by Ibn Sina, so psychology belongs to two realms. First, in physics. So he said that as long as your soul is in your body, it belongs to physics. After astrophysics, meteorology, physics, mineralogy, botany, zoology, and come to the study of human being as a physical and mental being. We are talking about human being as mental or psychological beings, their psychology is discussed. But when the soul is separated from the soul, then it belongs to one of the metaphysical sciences called Al-Ma'ad, which means eschatology. So, in Ibn Sina's systems, psychology or soul, discussing the soul, belongs to two areas, which is physics and metaphysics. In this occasion, I want to talk about the urgency and relevance of Islamic psychology as against the modern psychology. You know, I heard, and I also has written here that in the modern psychology there's a secularization of psychology, you know, from soul, as formulated by Plato, for example. Plato still talk about soul, and also followed by Muslim philosopher, so-called nafs or soul, which is something that is spiritual. They call al-jawhar al-ruhani, or al-jawhar al-jawhar, which means immaterial substance. But then, gradually, the soul was secularized, first by René Descartes in 17th century. Instead of calling it soul, we call it mind. But then, later, Sigmund Freud termed it consciousness. Because mind is too abstract. But even consciousness later was considered as too abstract. So come now, the soul is to be understood as the neurological functions of the brain. But there is a problem if you see it from religious perspective. Because if you believe that the soul is just the neurological function of the brain, you can imagine if the brain itself dies, there's nothing survive out of human beings. And this will endanger our belief in the hereafter. Why? Because if you don't believe that something survives after the death, so how can you believe in the hereafter? The belief in hereafter only makes sense if you believe in the immortality of the soul. But the soul is already secularized by the modern psychology. That's why in the beginning I want to talk about the secular